Hi guys! In this video I'm going to be giving you some tips on creating your poster for the Engineering Expo. So let's get started. A poster is a visual representation of your project. This is going to be important because now you have an opportunity to show your project to lots of people. And note that there are going to be lots of different people, lots of different kinds of people. Some people who may have some knowledge about technical issues in engineering, and some who are just there because they're interested in finding out about new innovations. So don't miss your opportunity to present your project well. So in this video, I'm going to be speaking briefly about a few different topics, including presenting your project visually, so the visual layout of your poster, framing information in posters, so what kinds of information do you need to include to frame or explain your project for your audience. And then lastly, we'll talk about following a template, because for Expo posters in general, you'll talk about, we will follow templates, and I'll talk about specifically the template that's being used for the OSU Electrical Engineering and Computer Science Expo. Okay. So presenting your project visually with a template, I should mention, it's going to be a bit different than presenting it without a template because a lot of decisions have already been made for you. Yay! So you still need to make sure that your visual organization matches your topic, your audience, and your organizational context. That organizational context piece is actually taken care of you by the template, right? That's the organization is Oregon State University, and the template makes sure that your project presentation is branded according to Oregon State University, and they all match together. So visually, it's going to be important to follow that template closely. In addition, you want to make sure that you have headings, for example, that are clearly laid out and that give cues to the information that you are providing, and that you also include pictures that are helpful and that are big enough to see, and that it's clear why you've included that, and that they actually do help to elucidate your project for the audience. So once again, be sure to use clear and consistent headings at the logical topic transitions. Make sure that your sections are cohesive, like we've talked about in the past. Make sure that they all have topic sentences, that there's a beginning and a logical conclusion to each paragraph section, and make sure that the larger subsections belong together. They're all on topic, and that those headings clearly pop out as guideposts for what you're going to be talking about in that section, and that it's a logical chunk of information. Be sure and use the columns, rows, and blank space intentionally. In this poster specifically, you can see the columns. They're very nicely and neatly laid out, and there's been blank space in between them. Again, this is laid out for you in the template that you'll use, but please be intentional that this is something that is important. Notice that you have all of your justifications here, very neat and clean, to allow for that clean white space to happen. This helps visually for the eye to organize information. Again, the divisions between the sections also need to be logical as far as the content that's in them. And then notice also the rows. Title rows we have here, although your headings aren't going to match up with those necessarily, but they're the titles of the columns. And then you also have rows that the eye can follow as far as the images and how they are spread out. Okay. Also make sure that the figures that you use are appropriate. any visual that you put in needs to have a clear purpose. Stay away from cartoons. These can be fun and instructional, but you've really got to be economic about the space you're using here. And you really have to make sure that any images that you're including, and you should include images, but they're very impactful and that they're very clear in their meaning and their the explanational value that they add is quite high. Make sure that they're labeled appropriately if necessary, and remember that they need to be the right size. Too large or too small is not going to be good for the overall visual layout. It's not going to fit well. It's also not going to be as impactful or effective for a person coming to view your poster. All right, now let's talk a little bit about the framing information, or the text content that you're going to be putting into the explanations that are in your poster. Make sure that you establish your purpose and your audience. Not the same way you would on a professional document, but in your own mind, so that you understand what context, what contextual circumstances are going to be impacting your decisions as you decide what to include in the framing information. So, for example, for an expo, your audience may be a mix of technical and non-technical viewers. So you want to take that into account. There are people who are not familiar with your project. So you're going to need to make sure to add enough information to introduce your project in a professional way. It's a professional context as well. And then to accomplish your purpose, which is to explain your project in a professional light, in a way that is complete, accurate, interesting, and that potentially is going to catch the eye of investors or those who might be able to help you in your work at some point. So for those technical and non-technical audiences, you'll need to keep a few things in mind. You want to be sure to include enough technical details so that engineers, specifically electrical engineers, also for an electrical engineering audience, can judge the accuracy and the efficacy of your design. You also want to include enough explanation, though, for those who do not have as much technical knowledge. So you want to make sure that those explanations are well developed for the non-technical audience, and you might also include a few definitions. Again, being very economical about the space, because there isn't a lot of room for text on your poster, so everything needs to be very concise. Be sure to include framing in introduction and summary. So that is a section that you'll need to be sure to include of your project. So again, this is an introduction not to the poster, as you would, for example, have an introduction to a document. You can bypass that step, and here you want to have an introduction to your project, or a summary of the project. And then you also want to have beginnings and endings to each subsection or topic section in the poster. And then you also want to make sure to explain figures. For example, the block diagram needs to have a textual explanation that goes along with it, as well as the requirements section. So a little bit about following the template, lastly. The template gives you fonts, colors, and organizational branding that cannot be changed. In fact, if you do not follow strictly to those, your poster will not be accepted because it will not fit in with the rest of the posters as the organization wants. So be sure to pay close attention, and those are also laid out on the Expo website as far as which specific fonts to use. And then the poster has the colors and the organizational branding. For example, Oregon State University College of Engineering, Electrical Engineering, and Computer Science. So those should be exactly the same, as well as the color scheme. Organize information like sections, section breaks, bullets, images that you use. Make sure that that is all appropriate to your project. So for example, you don't have to put images exactly where they've put them. They don't have to be the exact same sizes that they are here. You don't have to have a bulleted list here. These are all decisions. What you put here, the information that you plug into these spaces needs to be logical, specifically for your project. Okay, so certainly don't put the word subhead here. All of the text that's in here, everything here, is just a filler to show you the format that it should be in. All right, that's all the tips that I have for you today, but please do contact me if you have other questions. I'm happy to help. Good luck with your Expo poster.